Hey guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here with another album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Nas record, Magic 2. The late career resurgence of Nas is genuinely nothing short of astounding to experience in real time. Now, just as a quick recap of his career, it should go without saying that Illmatic, his first full-length studio album, is a classic. It's essential if you want to get into not only rap as a genre, but music. It's an essential must-hear album, blah blah blah, and pretty much nothing that he's released since then has even come close to the massive amount of musical, creative, and even cultural impact that Illmatic has had in the decades since it first was released. That being said, there still are a number of other projects from Nas that are well loved and well liked, just nothing that's as colossal as Illmatic was, of course. But even with that one essential career defining, even genre defining album removed from his discography, Nas's career is kind of rocky, to say the least. Thanks to generally well-liked releases like 2012's Life is Good and less than beloved releases like 2018's Nasir alike, Nas didn't really get back on the track that he first started with until, say, 2020's King's Disease, the first of a now trilogy. At least at this point, with the rate that he's going and releasing them, it's probably going to be like 50 albums by, say, next month, but hey, for now it's 3 albums. After releasing 3 albums since that first King's Disease record, of course those being the other 2 King's Disease albums, as well as 2021's Magic, Nas is back, again, to provide a sequel to Magic that is nearly and equal to its already very strong predecessor. I mean, first things first, Nas is great, that goes without saying. He's put out a lot of great material, and he's put out a fair amount of classic essential material, too. But more than anything, he is representative of this sort of archetype of a flawed but great, but still definitely flawed MC. I mean, there's plenty of rappers throughout the history of the genre that have been like that, but it's arguable that Nas is really the golden child of that particular trope, a rapper that has put out some god-tier, masterpiece-level material that also has put out some just pure hot garbage as well, to an equal extent, arguably. Though, to be totally honest, that's never really had anything to do with his actual performance work. It's had more to do with a weakening lyrical game as well as some poor production. But now that he's back on track with some stronger lyricism and some genuinely good production, it honestly feels like nothing can really stop Nas. Because the truth is that even on his weakest albums, his charisma has never really waned in any way. He's always been a consistently strong performer, just a performer with bad material at times. The manner in which Nas can mix together casual poetry with a lot of self-indulgence, shall we say, is nothing short of legitimately impressive, thanks to one basic yet difficult to obtain quality, and that's just the fact that Nas is genuine. I mean, he's a veteran of a rare breed, to be totally honest. A rapper that was beloved at one point and is still completely beloved today, even with his most recent releases. I mean, even when you think of the most iconic rappers of all time, when's the last time anyone's really talked about how great the latest, Kool Keith record was, or anything like that? Probably not very recently. My point is that Nas is still active, he's still beloved, he's still putting out a ton of music at a pretty ridiculous rate considering how far into his career he is at this point, and more than all of that, he is aware of all of those things, and he really does use Magic 2 as a vessel to put those things on display, to really demonstrate his veteran status while also proving that he can still really work with the absolute best of them, both literally working with them and also working in the sense of being a peer to some of the best and most recent rappers of today. I do think it would be a mistake to file Magic under M for mind-blowing or anything like that. The lyrical content here is not some sort of game-changing thing that's just completely going to shake up the industry or anything like that, but I do think that there are a lot of snippets here that would reasonably be amazing additions to a lesser rapper's portfolio, and as it stands, Nas already has so many iconic lines and lyrics that a lot of the stuff here just feels very him, and that's not a bad thing at all. For example, you have the track Slow It Down with some excellent lyrics, including Made They Pay Grade, The Youngster Phase, Same Mistakes Though Times Have Changed, Trying Not to Touch the Cage But Touch Interior, In the Front is the Trunk That's a Custom Carrier, and it's in lyrics like these that Nas really does simultaneously reflect on his career and life up to this point while still managing to feel very feisty in terms of his own boasting. It's not your average everyday, hey, I'm super cool because I'm a good rapper and I have money and I'm cool kind of thing, because it feels like it's coming from a place of honesty. It's not Nas trying to fit some sort of mold to really appeal to some sort of niche within rap or anything like that. It's seriously just him with his own particular outlook on both himself and his place in the current music industry, done through his own unique filter that admittedly hasn't changed much as the decades have gone on in terms of lyrical style, but hey, what works works. I mean, it's lyrics like those that manage to be sort of reflective of his own journeys, but still celebratory of his own prominence in rap. Again, something that a lot of rappers, or musicians of any kind for that matter, can't really manage to maintain over the course of multiple decades, let alone as long as Nas has been doing it. So, I mean, really, I think that there is a lot of genuinely great lyrical content here. I also love how direct and blunt Nas can sometimes be about referencing real world events. For example, the track What This All Really Means ends up directly referencing the infamous leak of his 1999 album I Am and how that resulted in the album being rushed, etc., as well as how he was originally going to work on a documentary about that event with the late Nipsey Hussle before his passing. I think that it's just really interesting to see Nas head on tackle so many real things that happened to him. And again, it just adds another level of heart to a record that, again, is from a man that has pretty much prided himself his entire career on being the real deal. He's not a dude talking about whatever happened to him that didn't actually happen. He's not playing a character per se or anything like that. Nas is just being himself. And the way that there's no cryptic messages or any sort of real symbolism in his lyrics beyond a little bit sprinkled here or there just for a touch of flair, it's just another thing that really adds to that quality for me. I digress. Pair those strong lyrics with strong performance, strong charisma, and a variety of other strong qualities, and you have the outcome. Magic 2, which, again, has a lot of really strong qualities about it. It's just an above-average performance from a guy that has been more than above average for quite some time at this point, several years at the very least. Magic 2, however, is not just another Nas record, it's specifically another Nas record that's also a collaboration with producer Hit-Boy. And if you're unaware of who he is, then you probably really haven't been paying a ton of attention to some of Nas's recent releases. Hit-Boy has been the primary behind-the-scenes guy for what most people now consider to be the ongoing career revitalization of Nas. For many records now, they've been working together, and pretty much every quality that has made most of these Hit-Boy collaborations great is present on Magic 2 again, which, again, that means that there's not a ton of variation here in terms of album to album from the first Magic album to this second entry in what I'm assuming may be a series, but also, that's, again, not a bad thing, because the Hit-Boy collabs in the past have been great, and this one's pretty great too. There is certainly an argument to be made that a lot of the East Coast classic boom-bap style influences that are found on Magic 2 are a bit obvious, just considering Nas's long-standing history with that particular sound, some of his most iconic material specifically coming from that movement and that scene in its original moment. But at the same time, I do feel that Hit-Boy often has a pretty fresh take on things sonically, with enough modernized nuances that it all manages to come together and feel more like a fresh, again, modernized spin on a classic, primarily 90s kind of sound, and instead it just doesn't feel like a nostalgia bait, nostalgia grab, whatever you want to call it, kind of moment. It just really does feel like a nice remix on a classic sound, even if that's a classic sound that Nas has, again, been working with for a very long time. The often aesthetic reflection of a lot of 90s boom-bap sounds paired with some jazzy, jazz rap kind of undertones also manages to go quite nicely with a lot of the lyrical content here, with tracks like Pistols on Your Album Cover, as well as Motion, directly referencing different eras of Nas's music. And that doesn't always mean that those eras 100% line up with the sound that is present on this record, but nonetheless, having a particular style predominantly featured on this record that harkens back to an older era of both Nas's career and rap as a genre is fitting for a lot of songs that do exactly that, just in songwriting form instead. Hit-Boy may not be a producer that's as universally beloved or even as famous as someone like, say, The Alchemist or even like Madlib or someone like that, but at the same time, there are few rapper-producer duos that are as consistently reliable and as consistently strong as Nas and Hit-Boy have been for the past handful of years. If you really want or need proof of that, then just start at, say, the first King's Disease record and work your way up to here on Magic 2, and you'll see one of the best runs that any classic rapper has perhaps ever made well after what most would probably consider their quote-unquote prime. More than anything, however, I really do appreciate how Magic 2 manages to play into the development of both Nas's sound and general career. I mean, there are a lot of sounds on this record that have been present in some of his recent releases and have been present in a lot of his music for just decades at this point. But at the same time, there are certain creative avenues taken on Magic 2 that range from rare in Nas's catalog to just genuinely never heard before by him, at least not on a mainline release, anyway. This can arguably be most heavily seen in some of the trap-based songs here, such as Abracadabra, as well as the 21 Savage collaboration bonus cut One Mic, One Gun. And you know what? I think it's kind of interesting to hear how Nas's flow, his cadence, his overall persona behind the mic pairs with trap beats. I think it's an intriguing thing, and for the most part, I think that they pair pretty well. I mean, I'm not saying that these songs are inherently better than the more traditionalistic cuts on this record just because they feel a bit more modern in terms of sound. In fact, I actually think that the trap instrumentals are slightly more predictable than some of the throwback instrumentals here, but nonetheless, I think it's really cool to see Nas kind of keeping up with the times, at least to an extent. Not that he really needs to, he's obviously just choosing to, and I think it's just a great thing to see from him. And the thing is, he could certainly act in a manner similar to many of his peers from the East Coast throughout the late 90s, which is just kind of sticking with the same style decades on, leaving an out-of-date sound behind, currently tethering yourself to the first golden age of your career most likely, etc., etc. And to an extent, Nas does do that without the whole tethering part at least, but he really does seem to be a bit up with the times in terms of current trends in hip-hop, and while he doesn't actually chase those trends per se on this record, you can tell that he's still willing to experiment with anything that's fresh, new, and relevant in the genre, and I think that those moments where those ideas do really shine through on Magic 2 are kind of beautiful in a way. It really is cool to see Nas doing something very different with his sound, and something a bit unpredictable, even if the instrumentals themselves leave a little bit to be desired in terms of their base concepts and genres, but nonetheless, hearing very modern instrumentals being paired with Nas just himself is interesting in its own right, and already makes Magic 2 something worth checking out, if not just for that. I also do want to clarify, Magic 2 is not like Nas pulling out his best Playboi Carti impersonation or anything like that. I want to make that very, very clear. This is not Nas's Whole Lotta Red or anything like that. But at the same time, Magic 2 is, again, something very creatively invigorated, especially coming from Nas, and it's nice to see. And like I said before, if not only just to hear how Nas is currently adapting to modern-day hip-hop while still sticking to his roots, Magic 2 is something heavily worth checking out. It really is a kind of beautiful thing to see Nas go from a legend arguably well past his prime to someone that can swing with the best of them even today, decades into his career. I mean, it's certainly something that could be said that Nas never really lost it. He never really lost his spark or his ability, but there is no denying that he definitely became way more inconsistent the second that the 21st century hit. While it could be said that some of his peers, such as Jay-Z, put out quality records at a more consistent rate for a longer period of time than Nas did, you would also be hard-pressed to find a rapper that debuted in the 90s from East Coast, West Coast, or even the South that is as heavy-sounding behind the mic as Nas is today. I mean, really, a lot of classic rappers end up losing their spark after a while, as any musician of any kind does. Nas is not one of those people. I'm going to give this record 3.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that is the end of this album review. I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.